Hello everybody, this is Gregory with How I Lost Over 100 Pounds and Kept It Off for 30 plus years, where there should be no hesitance with your weight loss and weight maintenance. Now, today we're going to talk about the importance of having some sort of spirituality in your weight loss journey. Now, before we begin, if you need help from the weight loss perspective, contact me through the Clarity FM link found here in the episode notes. Also in the episode notes, you'll see links to my website that has a bunch of recipes and articles that might help you, links to my podcasts, and if you appreciate my content, there's a link for PayPal. You can make a little donation. All right, so in this episode, many of you are not going to agree, and that's perfectly fine. Remember, the whole raison d'etre of this channel is to give you tips on what helped me. It doesn't necessarily mean that it's universally going to help everybody. So there are going to be episodes in the future of things that you might not agree with. Like, for example, if I think that a low-carb diet is good, some of you are like, well, Gregory, I lost weight doing a low-fat diet. And look, when I lost my weight in 1990, it was not a low-fat, it was a high-carb, low-fat diet. So again, there's going to be times where we don't agree. But I do want to give you a background on my faith because it's important in regards to the weight loss, and it's important, I think it can help you in regards to wherever you are in your weight loss or weight maintenance journey. So, as I mentioned on the 7 things you must know about me, I am a Christian. I'm a Catholic Christian. Now, before you Protestants say that we're not Christians, I mean, all Christians were Catholics for the first 1,500 years. But I mean, I have a Catholic channel. I apologize. You guys can post over there if you don't agree. But I was always raised a Christian. My faith was important to me all through my life. And certainly when I was obese, it was really tough because, again, I got bullied. I'll do a lot of the Confessions of an Obese Child episodes here. And it was a very difficult time. And I turned to God. I turned to God for support and for strength. I never really got angry at him. Like, why did you make me fat or anything like that? I just knew that I needed him and I needed help to get through just day in, day out. And luckily back in the 80s, unlike today, where kids can't really escape bullying, back in the 80s, when I got home, I could, of course, eat my 3 cheese enchilada entrees and watch television, but at least I could escape from the bullying from 3:30 to nighttime and then have to rinse, lather, repeat the next day. But I always had a close relationship with God. And then when I lost my weight, I was very happy, clearly. And we'll talk about this when I get to that part of Confessions of an Obese Child podcast. And I felt I had a certain amount of survivor's guilt, like, why me? Especially as I kept the weight off all these years. Like, why me? Why not that guy? Like, one of my closest friends was in a similar situation as I was. Overweight in high school, he played football, so they got him really fat so that he could be on the offensive line. And then he had a lot of diseases that developed from his obesity, and he's dead. He died. So I deal with a lot of the survivor guilt. And the other thing is, like, when I lost my weight, I felt indebted to God. I felt like, you did this solid for me, and I'm going to be not just loyal to you and praise you, but be your servant in any way you need me to be a servant. Give back, works of mercy. And that's one of the reasons why I have the Christian channel, is to give back to Christ. So coming to today, having some sort of relationship with a higher power, I think is important. And I'm not saying you have to be a Christian necessarily. You could be whatever faith you are. But I do think it's important because, look, life is always going to give us struggles. Whatever they are. Many of you are deeply immersed in them right now if it has to do with your weight loss and with getting picked on, or you can't find a mate, or whatever it is, you feel like you're discriminated at work. And then we're all going to have people that die in our life. We're all going to eventually get in a state of chronic pain. We're all going to suffer trauma of some sort, losing a job, losing a spouse, whatever it is. And I feel like having a relationship with God helps. Now, in the Catholic world, we have this belief that's existed since the early church, early centuries or after Jesus died, of our suffering, which is always going to be inevitable. We're all going to suffer on some level. we offer it up. And so like the crucifix, we look at the crucifix. It's not Protestants think we have crucifixes and it's a constant mockery of what Jesus died. He died once and that's it. No, it's a reminder to us of the sacrifice that Jesus did so we could achieve salvation. So we look at the crucifix and remember the passion, the torturing, and the nailing to the cross and the excruciating death that he had. So anytime that we have suffering, it brings us closer to what Christ went through. We also have a belief, again, suffering's inevitable, that we offer up our suffering. We offer it up to help others who are going through similar situations. And we're not going to go too much on talking about how we offer it up, but I think you compare that, and I think Protestants can relate. We know they believe that Christ suffered and it was a difficult thing and he did this for us. But you kind of compare it to what atheists are going to suffer too. Agnostics are going to suffer too. We're all going to suffer pains and tumult in our life. But the coping mechanisms really aren't there, right? If you believe in annihilation when you die, then what's the purpose of life? See, we're taught the purpose of life is to know God, love God, and serve God. But I think as an atheist, and again, I could be wrong. If you're an atheist, post in the comments, please, because I've never been an atheist. I just think life I think life would be harder because ultimately there's no guideline. See, the definition of religion is just traditions and customs that bind us to a higher power. And so when you are religious, whether you're Christian or Muslim or whatever, it gives you a guideline on how to live your life. The Bible gives you a lot of good examples, especially in the New Testament. You look at Galatians 5. There's a lot of places where there's lists of things that are good for you and lists of things that are bad for you. And so you kind of have this guideline on how to live a good life. The Mormons, despite their theology being kind of kooky, they don't drink alcohol, they don't even drink caffeine and so forth. And a lot of the the Christian Scientists are the same way. So I think these are good things. So as an atheist, though, you don't really have this kind of guideline. It's more like, well, we have these universal truths and we kind of follow those. But ultimately, I think when your life is devoid of God, it makes life a little harder. And I think ultimately you live more of a selfish life because without the idea of God and without the idea of salvation and judgment at the end of our life, you just do what feels right, do what feels good. And so I think ultimately you kind of live a more hedonistic life, because why not live a hedonistic life if you believe that after you die there's no afterlife? So it kind of makes sense that you would live that life. Whereas, let's say Christians who believe in an afterlife, there's something that guides us. And the atheists would say, well, it's fear that you think you can go to hell. No, well, God doesn't send anybody to hell. The only people that go to hell are those who choose to go to hell because they don't believe in God. And they're like, well, if you don't want to believe in God, then all right, you don't need to be with God. So I just think having faith in your life helps. Offering up the suffering that we have helps. It's kind of like volunteering. Like a lot of people who are really kind of neurotic and analytical, we can get so caught up in what me. And instead, like when you volunteer or do works of mercy, like go work at a homeless shelter or go work at a food pantry or whatever it is, it just naturally makes you realize that other people have it really bad. And I think it grounds you and humbles you and gives you gratitude. So I would say that doing works of mercy, which is important in my faith, we are expected to do works of mercy. Now, of course, works don't get us into heaven. That's a heresy called Pelagianism that the church denounced 1,600 years ago. Protestants like to say, Catholics say they can work their way into heaven. No, we don't. That was a heresy that we denounced 1,600 years ago. But works helps us be better people. Prayer makes us better people. Prayer makes us have more a life of virtue, because prayer in itself, especially proper prayer, which should be more a prayer of thanksgiving and praise, and not as much of prayer of petition, which is like, give me the Ferrari, give me the hot wife, help me lose 100 pounds. Those are fine, you can ask those, but understand ultimately it's God's will. You see this in the Epistle of James. James talks about it all the time. People who pray, but they pray for the wrong thing, and ultimately We have to pray to submit to God's will, whatever God's will is for our life. And instead of praying for things that obviously wouldn't be good for us, like a Ferrari, because that just corrupts us, ultimately we should pray for humility. We should pray for strength. And of course, if you are overweight, ask God, please help me lose the weight. Give me temperance, prudence. These are what we call cardinal virtues. And certainly, since we all have the appetite of concupiscence and the appetites, we really need to pray for temperance, because temperance keeps us even keeled, right? Not too much and not too little, just temperance. Prudence. Prudence is the gift of good judgment. So pray for temperance and pray for prudence. And I just feel, and again, you don't have to agree. This again is an episode about me. I found my weight loss journey and weight maintenance journey to be easier when I have a relationship with God. And that would be my tip to you if you don't. And I'm not telling you to be Catholic or anything like that. I would tell you just to have a relationship with God, to have running communication with Him, go to church, do works of mercy. And ultimately, as you're going through this journey of not just weight loss and weight maintenance, but this journey of life, it's a lot easier when you have a way to cope with suffering. And if you don't know what is the Christian viewpoint of how to deal with suffering, then of course you can always Google it. But it does make life a little easier to know that even if your life does end up being pretty rotten, because let's say you end up morbidly overweight, like 500 pounds, right? Ultimately, if you lived a good life, there's gonna be a reward, because we're only on this planet, we're just transients, right? This is just a blip in our lifetime. And so many people get distracted and think this right now is all that matters. And Christ says, don't worry about things that can take your body, worry about things that can take your soul, corrupt your soul. And so many people are just like, I need more stuff. I need bigger house. I need nicer car. I need hotter wife. I need more stuff. All that stuff isn't going to go with you when you die. So you should work on your soul, work on your virtue, work on the things that matter in the long run. But ultimately, in closing, it helped me, so I recommend it to you. But ultimately, that is your choice. Guys, post in the comments. Let me know if you feel that religion has helped you on your journey, or if it hasn't helped you. Hit the notification, subscribe, and share button, and share with others. Until next time, take care, God bless, and pray.